Sup, guys? It's Toad back with you. As always, it is Sunday, March 30th. Trying to make a run at the end of the month, man, which has been the worst month of my career. Although 2 days ago I had a good day. Yesterday was a small loss. I think I was 4-5 yesterday. Is that right? We had MLB is off to a decent start, even though my volume has been kind of crazy, and I'm continuing with that trend today. Uh, Going with another first 5 inning under as well, which all of my plays have lost in the bottom of the fifth so far with those, including yesterday's, which again was on the. Was that the Dodgers game again? I think it was. And it was going to be a push until the bottom of the fifth, and then multiple runs were scored in the bottom of the fifth to ruin that play again. So that was great, obviously. Baseball, I think, went 3-3 yesterday. I won against my Boston Red Sox with the Texas Rangers. One on the St. Louis Cardinals. One on, what was the other game that I had? I don't even remember. Lost on the Braves, 1-0, and still don't really know how that happened. I got my pitching handicap on the Braves side right, at least. And then I know I lost on the Toronto Blue Jays. That was brutal, dude. Max Scherzer got injured in the game. He got pulled in the third inning. He was doing okay. I mean, he'd allowed 2 earned runs, but which I think were actually home runs. But they were in the game. I think they were winning the game when he got taken out. I think they were up 4-2, and then he gets yanked. So it's like, what can you even do at that point? Your play is basically just dead. Even the first 5 inning bet didn't wind up winning in that one. So I didn't feel too bad about that. I would have felt worse if the first 5 inning bet lost. NBA continues to crush for me. I mean, NBA has been awesome. It continues to be my best sport. Everything else is just shitting the bed. I mean, I lost the hockey play yesterday, which that was one of those ones where you just fire on the home underdog, take the shot, and I do have another one of those today. You don't need to get every one of those right to profit, but that was kind of brutal as that game was tied 1-1 for a while. And, of course, wound up losing with the, who did I even play? Nashville Predators. I should stop playing them unless they're playing against the Bruins. That sucked. And then college basketball, that was just a loser the whole time. Florida, I mean, Texas Tech should have won that game outright, dude. That was bullshit. If you watch that game, I'm mad because I had Texas Tech in my bracket. I did have Florida in the survivor pool. In survivor pool, I didn't realize how insane it gets towards the end because you have to pick a team both days of the Elite Eight. You have to make sure that the teams that you pick there are the teams that are going to win in the Elite Eight. Those teams are then going to lose in the Final Four, because you can't pick those teams anymore. So you have to pick other teams in the Final Four. And those teams that you pick, you have to make sure that, the one team that you pick in the Final Four, you have to make sure is going to be the team that loses the championship. It's just completely insane. So I don't even know how that's going to go. The way that I'm setting my Survivor up right now is I think I'm going to take Houston today. And then it's going to set up, if that even wins, then I'm going to it'll set up for me to take either Duke or Auburn, I guess, and then whichever one of those teams I don't take is going to be the team that I pick in the championship if I even make it that far. Survivor is insane, man. I don't even know if I want to do it again, but there is a lot of money that could potentially be won there for not a huge stake. Like, I'm in a couple of pools. One has like an over $1 million prize pool, which is going to get split amongst the winners because it's probably going to be more than one winner, and the other one's like I don't know, somewhere in the tens of thousands. And total of like $125 to enter those two combined. So it is still worth it, even though it is probably going to wind up in me losing right near the end, which is the most devastating way to lose. You'd rather just lose right away if you're going to lose, obviously. Just like I say with my bets. But anyway, Texas Tech, they should have won the game outright, dude. I had them in my bracket. That would have differentiated my bracket quite a bit. They had the lead most of the game. They had the lead down the stretch. They were winning by 9 with like 4 minutes left. And they just completely lost the game, and they still would have won the game if they were able to hit free throws. It got down to a situation where I believe they were up again, and Florida had to intentionally foul them, and Texas Tech was in the 1-1. Texas Tech is not really that bad of a free throw shooting team, I don't think. They're a good shooting team in general, and they missed 2 front end of 1-1s. That pretty much ended the game. Like, how do you miss both of those? Where if you make one, then you're going to get another free throw attempt, obviously. And they missed both. So they had 2 intentional fouls on back-to-back possessions where they scored 0 on those, even though they were sent to the charity stripe. It's such bullshit, dude. And yeah, the bet on Florida obviously was a loser, deserved to be a loser, even though it looked like it was close to a winner. It was not. I should have played the under, though, in the Alabama-Duke game. That game went way under, so I was right about that. Speaking of unders, we're going to talk about unders in these two games today. I think under is probably the way to look in both games today. First game up is Michigan State, Auburn. Michigan State down from total down from 150 to 147. 56% of tickets, 71% of the cash on the under, though, but 56% of tickets on the over. I mean, we're in the Elite Eight now, man, so you expect defensive intensity. The unders do make sense for reasons other than just that, though. Like in this game, Michigan State, they don't take a lot of three-pointers, and they defend well against the three, which could kind of check Auburn and the fact that Auburn does take a pretty good amount of threes. So this game, I do think the under would make sense for that reason. You're probably going to get defensive intensity. Both of these teams don't play particularly fast or slow, but you might see them give in to kind of a slower style in an Elite Eight game like this. Yeah, I mean, the problem that I kind of like the under in the other game better just because of the pace, but the problem that I would have is that now these teams are adjusted to the arena, so a lot of times you want to look for unders in that first game where they play in that arena, whereas in the second game, you could see the teams be a little bit tired, although the tiredness can affect both the defense and the three-point shooting, so it's kind of hard to gauge that tiredness on that quick turnaround time. As far as the side is concerned, the number's gone up a little bit on Auburn from 4.5 to 5. It's gone up a little bit more this morning, I think, from a juiced 4.5 to 5. They're a little bit public, which kind of surprises me. 61% of tickets and cash. I expected Michigan State to be public here, man, because when the brackets came out, it seemed like all the talking heads were taking Michigan State. It seemed like people were just really ignoring Auburn, and I don't really see why that would have changed, really, throughout the tournament. I mean, I think probably pretty much probably everybody expected both teams to get here, although I bounced Michigan State earlier in my bracket because Michigan State, they are one of the two teams. It was them and St. John's coming into the tournament where if you have a top, I think it's the top, it applies to top 3 seeds in the tournament, 1 through 3 seeds. The 1 through 3 seeds that were not ranked in the preseason polls, they have never made the Final Four. So that's the history there. St. John's is already out. That history would be against Michigan State here. I mean, I do think Auburn is the better team. They should have more of a home advantage here with their crowd not having to travel as far to Atlanta. Although Michigan State, of course, has a big fan base, so they should show up as well. I don't know. I hesitate to have a lean in the game. I might slightly lean to Auburn in this game just because I think Auburn is the better of the two teams and the more battle-tested team throughout the season, even though both teams have been battle-tested. But also because I think that history is kind of against Michigan State. And Michigan State, in my opinion, they really haven't been that battle-tested throughout the tournament here. I mean, they've beaten a 15 seed and 10 seed and a 6 seed. So, I mean, I guess with Auburn, you could kind of say the same thing. Oh, who was Auburn played? Yeah, well, Auburn at least didn't beat 2 double-digit spreads, or 2 double-digit seeds. I mean, they only beat 1. I know seeds don't mean everything, but Auburn at least did play Michigan, who at least does play in the Big Ten and are a competitive team. Although Ole Miss, I know they're an SEC team. Probably not quite as good as Michigan, though. Ole Miss is a decent team, though, so I won't knock it too much. But Creighton is more of a threat than New Mexico, in my opinion, and that's who Auburn played in the second round. So, I don't know, man. I mean, I'm not going to play this. I'm not going to play either one of these games today. The other game's in Indianapolis, Tennessee, and Houston, and like I said, I lean to the under in this one as well. The total's up from 122 to 124.5 now, and it looks like it's continuing to go up. Maybe the public is coming in on the over. It looks like they are. 80% of the public thinking this total is low, and it's low for a reason, man. It is low, but it's low for a reason. 80% of the public there, or 80% of the tickets. Only 69% of the cash on the over, so I do agree with the under here. I mean, this is a game where you have two teams that play very slow. They're two of the best defenses in the country. They both defend the 3 well. Tennessee takes a lot of threes, though they're not really that good at hitting them. Houston doesn't take that many threes, but they are good at hitting them. But still, I think that it lends itself to an under, man. It's just the problem is, if you think this is going to be a low-scoring battle, it could be a really close game near the end. You could wind up with some intentional fouls that make it a little bit dicey and put the game over. So you could look to a first half under in this game as well, which might be a little bit safer, but the first half under is several points lower than the second half total. First half total, I mean, and it's that way for a reason. I mean, the first half total is always lower than the second half total, although this one is significantly lower, maybe kind of having to do that adjustment, expecting that there might be fouls at the end of this game. So I will stay away, but do lean to the under in this one. It looks like Tennessee is a bit of a public dog, too. 58% of tickets and cash on them. Houston down from 4-3, so some money has driven this line down. I do prefer Houston, though, just because I think they're the more balanced team. They actually have a good shooting team this year, a good offense this year. I mean, both teams very good defensively. Both teams are experienced. But I think Houston gets the edge because they can hit more of their shots than Tennessee can. Just more efficient offensively. So that's the way that I lean in. Of course, Tennessee has the Rick Barnes curse. Although now that I say that, it's going to be broken. It'll reverse jinx them. Hopefully not. But Tennessee, Rick Barnes, I mean, he's made the tournament 20 or something years between being at Texas and Tennessee and whatever. He's never made the Final Four. I know they were here last year, but Houston also, again, has a lot of experience. Kelvin Sampson, I might trust him a little bit more, actually, because he has at least been to the Final Four once. This Tennessee team was in this exact spot last year, though, and lost to Purdue. We'll see what happens. And then we have, what else? We got, I was going to say, Izzo against Bruce Pearl. I mean, that's a good coaching matchup as well. I mean, I think Barnes is the lesser of all four of these coaches today. Izzo Pearl, I mean, that's a coaching heavyweight matchup there. So I don't know. You'd probably give the advantage to Izzo slightly, but I think that the history is kind of against Michigan State there. Auburn is the more experienced team out of those two. And hopefully for my bracket's sake, it does wind up being Auburn and Houston because those are my two teams that I have in the championship game. So hopefully that winds up happening. Duke, I mean, looks like they're going to be a tough out, although really their first real test, I would say, was kind of last night, but they just keep winning, so it scares me a little bit. But Duke has not faced a very elite team that is also a slow-down team yet, so we'll see what happens, because Alabama and Arizona both like to play fast, and Duke could try to slow them down and throw them totally out of their element, but both Tennessee and Houston like to play slow, and Auburn doesn't play as fast as those other teams, and Michigan State. Well, and then who else do we have on the other? Florida does play fast, and then Michigan State doesn't play particularly fast either. So let's go over to NHL here. I do have one play in the NHL, and it might be the only game I even talk about because these games are just so uninteresting, man. I mean, most of these games are just huge spreads. It's like, do I even really care about these games? Not really. I mean, Ottawa and Pittsburgh is the only one that actually has a competitive price, and it's not the game that I'm on. I probably lean to Ottawa here just because they're still fighting for the playoff spot, although Ottawa's doing pretty well right now. They're almost guaranteed a playoff spot at this point. They did just beat Columbus yesterday, and now they're facing a third game in 4 days, fourth game in 6 days, all in different cities, so it is a bit of a difficult spot for them, actually. So even though they are the team that has more to play for, they're pretty secure in their wild card spot now, so I don't know. Having to turn around and play in a back-to-back, probably you'll get Forsberg in net here on the back-to-back after Olmark played again yesterday. Beating Columbus, who's also competing for a wild card spot, is a pretty big win. Pittsburgh is pretty much a dead team now, but Pittsburgh might show up because they played really poorly in the last couple of games, losing 6-1 and 7-3. Might be a little bit angry, although they are returning home from a road trip. They have been away for a week, although they did stay in the Eastern time zone on that road trip, and it was only 3 games, so it's not like the worst road trip return spot there. So I don't know. It's not something I want to get involved in. And then I kind of look at the market to try to check myself. Ottawa down from -140 to -130, but 70% of tickets, 87% of the cash. So the line has been driven down on Ottawa, but the cash percentage is on Ottawa. So conflicting indicators on that one. The game that I am going to play, though, is I'm going to fade Toronto. I think they're in a spot where they might not show up focus. And I'm going to play this kind of resurgent Ducks team that's flying under the radar here with Anaheim. I don't like the spot for Toronto. Toronto just beat the LA Kings. That's a pretty big win. It was a nice bounce back after losing to the San Jose Sharks, which is a pretty bad loss there. They beat the Kings. Nice win there. They're finishing the road trip now, but also it's a third game in 4 days, all in different cities, kind of, and a back-to-back, although going from LA to Anaheim is just, a half hour up the road, but still, it is a back-to-back, and they're having to play 3 games in 4 days, including that shootout game. So it could be a bad spot for them, coming off a big win, and they got Florida up next, which is a huge game against the returning champs. They might overlook this Anaheim team, man. In Toronto, we know they're going to make the playoffs. I mean, I don't know if they have that much to fight for right now, whereas Anaheim, they're at 500 right now. I mean, it's highly unlikely they're going to make the playoffs, but they're not technically eliminated yet. I know they're coming off a pretty big win, overtime win over the Rangers. Whenever you beat a team like the Rangers, that's pretty good, so you might be a little bit overconfident, but with the Leafs coming into their place, I don't think they're going to be overconfident, man. And plus, when you're at 500 and you've won multiple games in a row to even get to 500, I think you want to get above that 500 threshold, man, because you want to say that you have a winning record rather than a losing record, and you're going to be focused when you have a good team like Toronto coming into your place. So I think it's a sandwich spot for Toronto. Toronto has less rest. Anaheim's not traveling at all, though Toronto's only going up the road from the last game. But I think it sets up better for Anaheim. I'll be on Anaheim in this game. It's one of those ones where you take the shot on the money line. I think you could take the puck line, but it's a little bit pricey. I think at about minus 170, so that gets into that kind of expensive puck line territory where I don't want to look to the puck line or do that split bet thing, and I just say, just go with the money line, and you're basically just hoping to pick up about 40-something% of the games when you play it at this price, so just, play a smaller amount to win the same amount that you play to win on your other bets. Toronto's down from minus 170 to minus 167. Looks like 68% of the tickets on Anaheim. I don't know if that's accurate, but 80% of the cash. We might see this change, though, because this is a night game at 8:07 p.m. Eastern, but it looks like some early movement driving the line down towards Anaheim, and maybe the early money is more heavy on Anaheim. So that is where I'm going. I like the situation, how it sets up. So, not very exciting, but I'll be on Anaheim. And then we'll go to the NBA here. I do have one play in the NBA. Some of these games are somewhat interesting. I mean, LA is at Cleveland, although Cleveland has essentially wrapped up the 1 seed. I think Boston, my Celtics, are 4 games back, but it's highly unlikely they're going to overtake Cleveland. So Cleveland, pretty secure right now. They did just lose to Detroit, but they are playing a 3rd game in 4 days, 4th game in 6 days, and a 5th game in 8 days, actually a 6th game in 10 days, it looks like, and a 7th game in 12 days, and actually an 8th game in 13 days, all in different cities pretty much, zigzagging all over the place with one home game back in there, and then a quick trip to Detroit where I had Detroit in that game. I thought it was a bad spot for Cleveland rest-wise, but it doesn't get that much easier. I don't think there's that this is a great rest spot either. They did lose back on the 18th at the Clippers, so the Cavs might show up just for kind of revenge purposes. Want to get revenge on the Clippers, but the Clippers do have more to play for. Clippers are on this nice streak right now, but they're still playing for playoff positioning where Cleveland really kind of isn't at this point. And Cleveland has had a way more packed schedule recently, so the Clippers, even though they're out on the East Coast right now, are now coming a little bit into the Midwestern area there, to the Lakes region there, I guess. Clippers are still kind of the more rested team right now. They've had fewer games in that stretch than Cleveland has, so I still kind of lean to the Clippers in that game, getting a lot of points and probably going to be the more motivated team, in my opinion, just based on what these teams need to do as far as playoff positioning. I don't know what the Clippers... let me see. I'll have to look real quick, actually. Clippers, what are they looking at as far as their playoff positioning is? Yeah, they definitely need it because they're sitting right there basically in a tie with the Warriors for the last spot out of the play-in, so they really want to avoid the play-in. So the Clippers do have more to play for here. So I lean to the Clippers. Cavs sitting at a 7.5-point favorite. 76% of tickets, only 65% of the cash. Lean to the Clippers in that game. What else we got? Atlanta, Milwaukee. I mean, both of these teams are kind of secure in where they are in their playoff positioning right now. I think they're both kind of sitting with some padding here, so I don't know what to think about this game. Milwaukee is in the 6th spot. They could move up. They probably want to try to get a home series here, but it's highly unlikely they're going to fall out of the top 6 and into the play-in game. So Milwaukee, not really in danger there, although obviously it would be nice if they could get a home spot there. Atlanta is actually almost pretty much guaranteed to be one of the home play-in teams at this point. It's highly unlikely they're going to be able to move up. But it's also not that likely they're going to drop down to these road play-in spots either. So neither team really has as much to play for. I don't think Milwaukee is coming off that ugly loss in the return home spot to the Knicks. So I played the Knicks in that game. Again, a return home spot, usually not the greatest spot, man. You have all that travel behind you. You can get distracted by having to return back to home life. But then usually in the second game, you kind of play a little bit better after that if you don't play well in that first game. So I think Milwaukee is in a bit of a positive spot for that reason. Atlanta, I believe, might have played yesterday. Let me see. No, they did not. What am I thinking? They haven't played for a couple of days. They're going to Milwaukee, up from Miami, though, so they are traveling a bit. A third straight game on the road, although a couple of days off to try to kind of break that losing momentum and break that rest. So I don't see it being that much of a negative for either team really there. So I'll stay away. But the Bucks are down from 5.5 to 4 with juice. 92% of tickets. Public likes the Bucks here, but only 57% of the cash. So looks like the money is coming in and taking the Hawks here, and maybe it's kind of desperation mode for the Hawks a little bit there. Well, not desperation mode, but Hawks probably have a little bit more to play for, I guess I should say. They're not desperate, but they're probably they do have more of a chance to fall into the road play-in spots than Milwaukee does to fall into the play-in spots at all. So Atlanta, as far as desperation is concerned, they probably have a little bit more to play for in that regard, at least. The game I'm actually playing is going to be to lay the points with the Minnesota T-Wolves. I think they have more to play for, even though I know you're laying a price with them. So when it's a team that needs to win the game and the pressure might be on them a little bit, a lot of times you don't want to lay the points. But I think it makes sense to fade Detroit here, man. I just played Detroit, and they beat Cleveland in their last game. And I think Cleveland had won, I think, 12 games in a row against Detroit or something. Although Detroit had played them really close the previous time they played them. Huge win for Detroit against Cleveland. Now I know they start a road trip. You're usually focused to start a road trip, but you're coming off beating Cleveland, man. You got Oklahoma City up next on ESPN. That's a huge game. I think Detroit might be in a little bit of a letdown spot / hangover spot here, even though Minnesota's not really a team you're necessarily going to overlook. But when it's sandwiched in between beating Cleveland and OKC up next, two of the top teams in the NBA, yeah, I mean, it does look like a sandwich spot to me. Minnesota needs the game more as well because if you look at the standings here, Detroit, they're sitting in the 5th spot. And yes, I know they are playing to try to get a home series. They could move back up and overtake the Pacers. So they are playing for that. They're not going to fall out of the top 6, though. Highly unlikely. Minnesota, they're right in this tight grouping here. And they're in the play-ins right now. A half game out of being out of the play-in. So they're trying to get out of the play-in. So I think they need this game more, man. They do not want to be in one of these play-in games. As the Minnesota T-Wolves, I mean, the West is actually a pretty strong conference, man. If this Minnesota T-Wolves team is going to wind up potentially in the play-ins, that's insane. So they do have a little bit more to play for here. And I think the spot sets up better for Minnesota. Minnesota's just staying at home. They did just beat Phoenix, but that's just kind of a whatever game for them. I mean, they've beaten Phoenix 8 times in a row now, at least, maybe even more than that. So I don't think they're going to care that much about that game. They had a lot of rest before that game. Came into that game with 3 days off. So I think they are going to show up for this game. They need to keep winning. So, yeah, I'll lay the points with Minnesota there. Minnesota's up from 6.5 to 7 with juice, so some line movement early on the T-Wolves, but 76% of tickets and only 61% of the cash, so I'm a little bit worried that the T-Wolves look public with less of the cash on them, but I'm doing it anyway. We'll go with the T-Wolves. Pistons in a bad spot, and the other thing about this is that Cade Cunningham is still not going to be back for Detroit, although if he was going to come back, I'd say, well, this is a reverse injured player spot now. We'd probably be getting a better number on the T-Wolves, so I'd still play the T-Wolves. But with the Pistons without him, I mean, they're playing without their best player. I know I played them without their best player in the previous game, but it's all about the spot, man. And they may be, having to deal with that thinner roster, maybe a little bit worse for Detroit there. And then we do have Houston and Phoenix. I mean, Phoenix really has got to be pretty much a desperate team right now, as they're the one team that's right there out of the play-in spots right now, trying to get into the play-in spots. They might lose a play-in spot to the massively injured Dallas Mavs, which is insane. Phoenix just cannot beat Minnesota. Coming off two pretty bad double-digit losses, really, although to good teams in Boston and Minnesota. Coming back home from that, it's desperation time for Phoenix, man. Houston, definitely more secure in their playoff spot there. They're going to be one of the top couple seeds. They're going to be hosting a playoff series, I would think, most likely at this point. Houston coming down out of elevation to go to Phoenix, and they do have the Lakers up next, and they beat Utah. Who cares? But it does look like the situation is actually worse for Houston, and Phoenix needs the game more. But then if you look at the market is all over Houston here. I don't know what's going on with Phoenix, if they have injuries or what. I can look in a second, but Phoenix, 74% of tickets and 58% of the cash. So Phoenix is actually a public underdog, which makes no sense. You would think that the public would look at this and say, even though Phoenix has Durant, and I know Beal has been hurt, I don't know if he's going to be back or whatever, but the public has got to be looking at this and thinking Phoenix sucks. Like, they've just been sucking it up right now, and Houston's good, and we're basically just picking the winner here. So I don't understand how the public is not on Houston here. But the line has gone down from -2.5 to -2. Houston looking like an anti-public. I mean, the line's gone down, but Houston is looking like an anti-public road favorite here based on the percentages, even though the line has gone down, which conflicts with the percentages. So very strange. I don't know what I would want to do with this game. So obviously that means I'm not going to play it. We got Beal is still out. We already knew that. Not a whole lot going on in the injury report otherwise. So kind of interesting, kind of strange. Let's go over to MLB, where I always play a ton of MLB when we have all these teams playing. Well, not really. Last year I didn't do it as much. This year I'm going a little bit nuts, man. So let's just jump right into it. I mean, you'd think you might want to look to the Brewers after getting absolutely annihilated 20-9 yesterday. I mean, just ridiculous. You might think that you want to look that way to try to salvage the series. A lot of times you want to look to a team that is trying to win the final game of the series after losing every other game in the series. Problem is, do you want to really go against the Yankees right now when the Yankees have those rigged bats now, too? They changed their bats, which I think the league has got to outlaw those things, man, or every team has got to start using them, because I think it's just ridiculous. Oh, let's just change our bats, which is almost like weighting the bats differently, putting the wood, like, focus in a different spot. It's almost like corking the bats, and they hit like a record amount of home runs in yesterday's game when switching over to those bats. It's just absurd. But in this game, Stroman against Savali, I never really trusted Savali. Stroman, actually, both pitchers actually have decent numbers against the opposing hitters, though. So maybe an under actually makes sense in that game, even though I'd be worried about that, too, with those rigged Yankee bats. I'd be concerned about it, too. But because yesterday's game was so high scoring, the under might make sense. But because the game was so high scoring, it also probably means the bullpen was used a lot more than what you would think. So I'm going to stay away from that. I don't want anything to do with it. What I am going to do, though, is play Baltimore. Plus 110. I'm going to go full game on this one on Baltimore. It looks like the money is coming in on Baltimore. Line down from Toronto, -130 to -127. 63% of tickets, 81% of the cash coming in on Baltimore. And I know Baltimore is 2-1 so far in the series, and we've had a lot of high-scoring games here. But it's not like a situation where Toronto's trying to, like, salvage the rest of the series here. I think this is a matchup situation. I think we can go full game on this because the bullpens were kind of equally used yesterday, so I'm not as worried about that. But I think Toronto actually used their bullpen a little bit more innings-wise because, remember, Scherzer went out in the third inning, so Toronto had to go into their bullpen earlier. Yesterday, Baltimore left Creamer out there until like the sixth inning, I think, even though he didn't do very well, but which I expected. But, yeah, so Baltimore's bullpen is probably in better shape as well and may actually even be the better bullpen. I mean, I don't know if I trust Toronto's pitching at all. But speaking of not trusting Toronto's pitching, we're going to fade Chris Bassett here. I mean, he sucked last year. He had a 4.16 ERA, which isn't that bad, but 1.46 whip was terrible, dude. He was putting almost 1.5 base runners on base per inning. That should equate to a higher ERA than that. He was just not very good. He's an older dude, maybe kind of still a serviceable pitcher, but Baltimore also is, of course, very familiar with him because they've seen him a bunch since he's been on Toronto, but also he hasn't done well against them. We have a big 77 at-bat sample size, to look at here with Baltimore's hitters, and they've hit him to the tune of a 312 average and 925 OPS. So Bassett gets lit up by these Baltimore hitters. And then on the other side, kind of a question mark as we got Sugano making his major league debut for the Orioles, even though he's a 35-year-old. He's been a professional pitcher in the Japanese leagues for the Yomiuri Giants or whatever. One of the probably the best Japanese team. He's been pitching for them for like a dozen years, I think, for over a decade. So he is an old dude. I know he's ancient, but he's more of a location pitcher, man. So I think he's probably lost some velocity, but he is definitely a control pitcher, which is what you want for like an older pitcher. You want guys that have control. And the thing that I like about this, obviously, is that the major leagues have never seen him before. This is going to be his major league debut, so I know there are going to be jitters there, so I'm a little bit worried about that like opening nervousness. But I think we're going to play it because Bassett has terrible numbers against the Orioles, and the Orioles, the Blue Jays hitters are totally unfamiliar with Sugano, so they don't know what he's going to throw. And sometimes these Japanese pitchers, they have like kind of weird stuff where when you haven't seen it in a live environment, you don't really know what to do with it or how to handle it. And you know, because he's a control pitcher, he's throwing like moving pitches. And I know he has like a good sinker. So these guys not having seen it before could be a little bit thrown off by it. So we're gonna put the stake on Tomoyuki Sugano in this game, and we'll take Baltimore as an underdog in this game. I think they have a big starting pitching edge in this game, and I think they probably have the bullpen edge too, and they might have the better bats too. I don't know about having the better bats. I think it's at least close. Toronto does still have Vlad Guerrero, so you probably still do have to give Toronto the edge offensively, but all the pitching, I think, lines up on Baltimore, and you're getting them as an underdog, plus 110. Give me the Orioles in this game. Next stop. I said it yesterday, and I'll say it again here. I'll say the exact same thing, and I was right yesterday. Colorado, Tampa, under would be the way that I would look in that game. The problem is, do you trust Ryan Feltner? I mean, his numbers were not good last year. It's just like what I said with Senzatella, but I think he actually did fine yesterday because Tampa's hitters are not very good, and they hadn't seen him before. Feltner, by the way, actually has pretty good numbers in a limited amount of time against Tampa, so most of their guys haven't even seen him before, and same goes for Bradley, although Bradley is actually the better pitcher. He has good stuff. Started pitching pretty well last year, and Colorado's hitters have not really seen much of him at all, and his numbers are better anyway, so I would look to the under in that game if I was going to play that one. I think probably the market was agreeing with me. Where's that game? It's down from 8.5 juice to the under to 7.5 juice to the over. 65% of the tickets and 71% of the cash on the under. I like the under in that one. I don't know what the bullpen situation is like. I considered playing this one. I almost did. Let me see. Bullpen situation. Rockies used more of their bullpen. They used 5 relievers. Rays only used 3. So the Rays bullpen is in better shape. So you could look to the Rays in this game as well. Senzatella actually gave up 9 hits and kind of got away with it and didn't strike out anybody in 4 1/3, which is kind of crazy. So the Rockies bullpen is in a little bit, the bullpen is in unrested shape such that I would probably maybe look to a first 5 inning under might make more sense in that game. But I'm going to stay away from it. Speaking of first 5 inning, I'm going to go to Miami in the first 5 inning in this game at minus 102. I don't want to play the full game because Miami used too much of their bullpen. I don't trust the bullpens in this game either. So I'm going to keep it limited to the starting pitching. Hopefully here, and I know Miami, I think, has won 2 out of 3 against Pittsburgh so far on 2 walk-offs, which is crazy. So maybe another reason to kind of avoid the full game here because Miami might be maybe in a little bit of a letdown situation. And it was a 12-inning game yesterday, so that's another reason why I just want to make this a first 5 inning game. We had a lot of bullpen usage yesterday, especially on the side of the Marlins. Falter went deeper into the game than Bayozo did. So I'm a little bit worried about that. So I'm going to keep it to the first 5 innings, keep it to the starting pitching match. And we got Andrew Heaney, who is now on Pittsburgh. Did he play on Pittsburgh last year? I don't think he did. No, he was with Texas for the rest of the season last year. He was still pitching decently. He's a decent pitcher. His win-loss record was terrible, but his numbers were mediocre. So he's not as bad as his win-loss record was. But I don't trust him, and his numbers aren't great against Miami, even though not many of them have seen him before. He has a lot of 300 batting average to them, although 600 OPS isn't that high. But he's an older dude who's been seen before. And on the other side, Max Meyer. The reason why I like this is that Max Meyer has never been seen before. I know his numbers didn't look good in his rookie campaign last year. I believe that was his first major league season, and it was up and down, man. I mean, he had some pretty bad starts in there, but he started putting it together later in the season. He had some pretty decent starts in the mix, actually, after he had some, towards the end of the season, he was kind of getting roughed up a little bit, I guess. But, I think he's a decent pitcher, man. And I think when he's facing hitters that haven't seen him before, I prefer Meyer. Now that he has that one season under his belt, I think it's going to be helpful. Pittsburgh's offense is not that impressive either. So, I mean, again, you could look to a first 5 under in this game as well, just because Heaney, he hasn't been seen by some of these Miami hitters before either, but I'm going to go with Miami instead here because I'm going to prefer Max Meyer here. He's the much younger pitcher. I think he has the better stuff over Heaney at this point, and he's the guy that is really the unfamiliar pitcher. As Heaney's been around for so long, guys kind of know what he's going to come out there and throw. You don't really know what to expect with Meyer coming out there, so I played on Meyer a few times last year for better and for worse, but we're going to go with it there. Miami in the first 5 innings. And if you look at the market, it seems to be agreeing with the Miami side here. Where are we looking here? Where's Miami? Miami's down from -110 to -107, but it looks like Pittsburgh is a very heavy road underdog here, which you see that happen a lot where if the public comes in, they say, oh, I know who Andrew Heaney is. I saw him pitching for Texas when they made that playoff run a couple years ago, whatever. Miami sucks, and I have no idea who this pitcher is. So obviously we're getting an underdog price here. Let's go with Pittsburgh. I don't agree with that, obviously. 83% of the tickets and only 74% of the cash on the Pirates. So they look like a public road underdog here. So some market reads would put me on Miami as well. I think Meyer, having that first season under his belt, could come out, dealing a little bit better this year. He is a good pitcher. He does have some good stuff. So that's what we'll go with there. San Francisco and Cincinnati, Ray and Martinez, both have pretty good numbers against the opposing hitters. I don't know if I trust these pitchers enough or trust Great American Ballpark to hold hitters in check enough, but I would slightly lean to the under in that game. The money has come in on the under, flipping it from 8.5 juice to the over to 8.5 juice to the under. 68% of the tickets and 98% of the cash on the under. I do agree with the under, but again, I don't know how much I trust those pitchers. Anaheim and Chicago. You got Jack Kohanowitz pitching for Anaheim. He had a pretty good season last year under the radar, and he's a giant on the mound, man. 6'7", 24 years old. He did well last year, especially, I think, kind of down the stretch. He started pitching well. I think I won some games on him last year. And the other thing about this is he actually faced the White Sox twice last year, and he did really well against them, holding them to a 192 average, 530 OPS in 2 games. The only issue I have with it is that takes the unfamiliarity aspect of it away. So the White Sox have now seen him twice towards the end of the year last year. But still, I still think Kohanowitz does have the edge here because the White Sox hitters suck. They've seen him twice now. In that second start, they still didn't do anything against him. So that kind of tells me that maybe it wasn't the familiarity with them because they had seen him very shortly before that and they still couldn't hit him. So I think Kohanowitz might be the real deal, man. And you still might get a decent price on him for a little while because I think he is under the radar. So I like Kohanowitz. And you got on the other side, Davis Martin, who's also a guy who hasn't been in the league very long, I don't think. He had significantly worse numbers last year than Kohanowitz. He is the worst of the 2 pitchers, and Anaheim did see him once, I think. I think he pitched him one of those games. Has only faced 4 of their hitters, though, but they hit 286 off him with a 769 OPS. So I do like Kohanowitz in that game, man. But Anaheim is actually down from -145 to -120. 53% of the tickets, 72% of the cash on the White Sox. So the money is coming in on the White Sox. I don't agree with it. It kind of surprises me that that's the case because Kohanowitz, again, like I said, I think he's the real deal, and Davis Martin, I don't believe is. So, and, the matchup numbers seem to indicate that we have a matchup edge with Kohanowitz as well. So that's the way I would lean there. I'm not going to play it. Cleveland and Kansas City. Tanner Bibby, I don't know what happened. He was supposed to pitch their opening game, I think, and he didn't actually pitch in the game. He's been pushed back to this game. I kind of like the under in this game because Bibby, we know he's a good pitcher. I mean, he is Cleveland's ace. He just got pushed back for whatever reason. I'm not sure. So hopefully he is healthy. I assume he is if he's going to pitch here. Michael Wacha, I mean, he's a veteran. He's been around for forever, so the hitters are familiar with him, of course. The hitters are familiar with both of these pitchers at this point, but Wacha actually has pretty good numbers against Cleveland's hitters, too. So I think an under might make sense there, even though we've seen a lot of low-scoring games in that series so far, but the total is down from 8.5 juice to the under to 7.5 juice to the under, so some pretty significant movement on the under. 54% of tickets, 90% of the cash on the under. I agree with the under in that game. Not going to play it, but that is how I would lean there. And then you got Ober against Palante in Minnesota, St. Louis. Ober, I like him. You know that I do. I mean, he had a rough start to the season last year, so I don't know if I trust him in the early season games. He seems to struggle early on and then get better as we get into the season, but he is a good pitcher. He's got good numbers. Even last year, I was saying his whip is indicating that he's really going to obviously get better, and we had other numbers from him in the previous season, so we know he's good. Palante, I don't really trust him, but he did start pitching pretty well last year at various points, so maybe he's not as bad as I think, even though that 1.3 whip is telling me that his ERA should have been higher than that. So I don't trust him, but I think both pitchers do have good numbers against the opposing lineups there. So an under might make sense in this game. Total's gone up from 7.5 juice to the over to 8.5 juice to the under. A slight move upward, but 53% of the tickets and 83% of the cash on the under. In agreement with me, and Minnesota looks like a public dog here too. So with more of the ticket percentage than the cash percentage, so the money actually kind of going against Ober in this game. I don't know if I agree with that, but I do agree with the under in that game. Here's me only liking unders in the MLB, but that's just kind of the way that it is. Speaking of which, let's do it in the Red Sox-Texas game. We'll go first 5 innings under 4 at even money here. And I know my first 5 inning plays, I've had 2 of them so far, first 5 inning unders, and they both lost in the bottom of the 5th. Let's not let that happen this time, man. But I like this matchup here because for Boston, we got Richard Fitz, baby. If the dick fits. He was good last year. He made a few starts last year, which was his major league debut season last year. And he's a looming presence on the mound, man. It's 6'3", over 200 pounds. He's a big boy. He's a what can I even say? He's a thick dick, man. Dick Fitz. His whip is a little bit higher than you'd like. Maybe a little bit of control issues, but really low ERA. I think he's got good stuff. I think out of the Red Sox, like young arms here, he is the best of them, which is why he's in the starting rotation right now. And of course, Texas has never seen him before. So Fitz has the advantage early on against the hitters in that they haven't seen him before. So we're going to definitely ride that sentiment there. And then on the other side, we do have an older Jacob deGrom pitching. But when he has pitched recently, even though I know he's in his 30s and he has been an ace throughout his career, but when he has pitched, he hasn't shown signs that he's that bad, man. I mean, last year he made 3 starts. It was either earlier. Was it early or late? I don't remember. Let me see. He came back late in the season, and he made 3 kind of shortened starts, but he only gave up 2 earned runs in that span in 10 2/3, 14-1 strikeout walk ratio. That tells me he was still dealing, man. He had control. That looks good. Those numbers look good to me. 1.69 ERA, 1.13 whip, so I don't think his career is over yet or anything like that, even though I know he's had injury issues. He's definitely missed time here. He hasn't made a lot of starts with Texas, even though he's been there for a while, but his numbers really have not dipped throughout his entire career. So he's still Jacob deGrom, man. Until we see that he doesn't have it anymore, I think that he does have it. And the Red Sox hitters, only 3 of them have ever seen him before. Only Devers has really done anything against him. Devers 3 for 8 off him, but Devers is looking like a joke right now, man. I think he's pissed off that they moved him away from third base. He's got 10 strikeouts in the first 3 games, which is an MLB record. He struck out 7 of his first 8 at-bats, I think. So Devers he might be intentionally tanking just because he hates the organization now for moving him away from third base, which he deserves, by the way, because he is the worst fielding third baseman in the major leagues. He's terrible. So he's DHing because he should still be able to hit, but right now he hasn't been doing that either. So I don't even know if I'm worried about the fact that he hits DeGrom decently, but only Newcomb and Story have seen DeGrom out of the Red Sox lineup otherwise. So only 3 hitters have ever seen him, and they're in their combined 28 at-bats worth, with 18 of them being Story. They only have 5 hits off him, a 10-to-1 strikeout walk ratio, 179 average, and 493 OPS. So when I was first looking at this, I was thinking, I might want to actually take the Red Sox here. But instead, I'm thinking the under has got to be the way to go here, man, because DeGrom still is showing he has good stuff. I think it's good that he pitched at the end of last year and he looked good, because now he's kind of getting back in that rhythm a little bit, kind of used to it again. Got some games out of the way there. His numbers are good against Boston, and then the rest of Boston's hitters have never seen him before. So he's got a little bit of that built-in edge as well, and the fact that a lot of these guys haven't even seen him before, which is crazy. The Red Sox have all these young hitters who haven't seen him before. So that's the way I'm playing this, is the first 5 under, man. I don't really trust the bullpens as much. The bullpens got some usage yesterday. So we're going first 5 inning under, as I'm losing my every morning, man. I got heartburn, man. I chug oatmeal out of a cup. I mix the overnight oatmeal, man. It's pretty solid, actually. Texas's relief staff is actually the one that you got to worry about. But that was a bullpen game. You remember I talked about that yesterday when I took Texas. I said Mal. We didn't know how long he was going to go in the game, and he was kind of an opener guy. But a lot of times when these teams go with an opener approach, they actually do well in the next game, pitching-wise. So instead of trying to fuck with, playing against the Rangers or anything like that, again, we're going with the first 5 inning under in that game and going with both starting pitchers to do well in that span. And then let's just finish it off with my last play, man, which is going to be another under. This is full game under. You know what it is. It's early season Seattle, in Seattle against Oakland. How can you not play the under here, man? And that's what I'm going to do. I know I've played 1 under so far in this series, and Seattle didn't even score in the game, and it somehow pushed on me. Somehow Oakland scored 7 runs in that game. Or sorry, not Oakland, the A's, excuse me. Can we call them Sacramento? I don't think we can. We're supposed to call them just the A's until they move to Vegas. They're the homeless A's up against Seattle here. I like this pitching matchup for an under, man. You got J.P. Sears going for the A's. I think he's a little bit under the radar. I mean, his ERA wasn't that great last year, but his whip wasn't that bad at 1.22. Kind of indicative that his ERA should have been a little bit better than 4.38. And against Seattle's pretty unimposing lineup, they've seen him a bunch, and they haven't done that much against him. He's got 89 at-bats worth against them and held them to a 191 average and 550 OPS. The number of walks is a little bit high, although 3 of them are Crawford. 7 walks, 19 strikeouts. But the rest of these numbers, Seattle has not been able to hit Sears very well at all. So I like that side of it with Sears. On the other side, I like Brian Wu, man. I got a lot of plays on Brian Wu since he's been in the league. He just doesn't put guys on base, man. 0.9 whip last year, 2.89 whip, and especially I think he's quite good in the friendly confines of Safeco or whatever the hell it's called now. Seattle has the most pitcher-friendly park in Major League Baseball, man, and early in the season when it's cooler weather and whatever, I like this even more, even though I know I said it the other day and it pushed, but Wu has 72 at-bats worth against this also unimposing A's lineup, and he's got a 17-3 strikeout walk ratio against them, and it's held them to a 167 average and a 408 OPS. And we've seen these games be low scoring in the series, man, in Seattle, and for good reason, of course. As we've seen 6, 7, and 6 runs. I don't see any reason why that should change here, even though you might argue, well, that means you're not going to get as much value on the under here, right? But I think the number is pretty much right where it should be. We're getting the key number 7 here, man. 7, the key number in baseball, because that's the number that you need to reach to break a 3-3 tie. So the danger is that this game goes into extra innings with a stupid fucking ghost runner on second base. That's where unders completely go to die. So hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully we get a regulation under in this one. That's where I'm going. If you want to play first 5 inning under, I still agree with that as well, obviously, because a lot of this is based on the starting pitching matchup. But I think the bullpen situation is fine as well. The A's. I keep saying Oakland. I can't not do it. The A's used 4 of the relievers yesterday, although Harris didn't throw that many pitches. I don't know if he'd be available today, but Mariners used 3 of their relievers. Kind of normal bullpen usage. Didn't really get taxed yesterday, so I think that's fine. So I think we can go with the full game under in this one. And again, it's a game in Seattle. These hitters are not very good either. So we're going to go with the under full game in that one. And this one's sitting around 7. It's 7.5 juice to the under now with 58% of tickets and 68% of the cash coming in on the under. Again, I agree with the under, of course, like I said. The best I found was under 7 at even money. So that's where I'm going. And that's going to do it. We're going to get this under an hour today, man, even though we have Major League Baseball. And I can't stop talking about Major League Baseball because I like a lot of these matchups. I like making these plays. I've had a huge quantity of baseball plays, and I'm above 500. I'm slightly on the winning side right now, so hopefully we keep it up. My plays one more time today. Anaheim Ducks plus 145. Minnesota T-Wolves minus 7. And in baseball, we got the Orioles plus 110. Miami Marlins in the first 5 innings minus 102. Red Sox Rangers first 5 innings under 4, and Seattle and the homeless A's full game under 7. That's going to do it. Let's have a good one today. Tower Gang Toad on Twitter. Patreon.com/Tower Gang to support the best podcast that you've ever seen. Peace, everybody.